Welcome to the Brave Journey Within with Jim and Jenn. This show is about the spiritual journey and all of the challenges, healing, wisdom, and consciousness expansion experienced along the way.
And here we are. Welcome back to another edition of the Brave Journey Within with Jim and Jenn. Hi, Jen.
Hey, how's it going?
I tell you what, there's a lot going on.
Yeah,
Stress doesn't stop ever.
yeah, same here. It's been a busy day.
Yeah, yeah. Kids are on spring break and not feeling well, and it's all happening.
So much. I know there's a lot going on here. But it's that time of year, it's a time of year when spring season starts to kick in, and then there's sports and school and lots of work stuff. The days are getting longer, so you try to pack more in. It's
Yeah,
just that time of year, I guess.
I hope it is improving.
Well, that's a great segue into what our topic is today. Do you want to describe what our topic is?
So we're going to be talking about beliefs versus reality, and everything that goes along with that, because that's a tricky topic. It's not easy, right? Like,
No.
there's a lot of depth to that, what that means. We cling to our beliefs very strongly sometimes, and our egos, we have our hooks, and it's not always easy to discern the truth. Uh, and I would say a lot of people aren't always looking for the truth, right? You want to be told something is good, and we stay in our comfort zone.
Yeah.
We don't want to give an opinion that might offend or that we think might offend somebody, so we don't dive into it further.
Well, and we also have our confirmation bias, where we feel comfortable with a certain idea about how things work or how things are working in our life. And then if something starts to upset the apple cart, we try to find things that help us feel comfortable again, things that are going to support our original idea. Because when we start shifting our paradigm or understanding a different way of seeing things, it can feel unstable. Um, it's I've been really into this audiobook I've been listening to lately called Parallel Universes of Self. It's by Frederick Dodson. And wow, I mean, there are so many things I've already heard. I like the way he puts things, and he has some really practical exercises, but it just had me thinking about, what really is this reality? We don't even know. Most of us were so in the depths of it that this is what's real, but our spiritual self is not necessarily real. It's just a place to escape. But what if it's the opposite? What if this is a matrix or some sort of an illusion and we're just in this weird, dreamy state of being and this is not even reality and we're going through all these things and we're just going to wake up and then it's going to be over? Is death really the wake up? I don't know, right? None of us really know, but we take it all so seriously. And to feel safe in this seemingly unsafe space, we develop rules and belief systems to help us cope and to navigate. And a lot of times it creates a lot more problems than it solves. And but the hard part is trying to understand where you're not seeing it as um, openly as you possibly could. So they call that limiting beliefs. What are your limiting beliefs? Where are you limiting yourself, your growth, your potential, your experience? And
Yeah.
most
What
of the
is
time, we don't
what
even
is
know,
true?
right? Yeah. It's funny, we're talking about how busy things are. It's like, well, is it really? I don't know. That's just our experience in the moment. I mean, you can go crazy with this stuff and really trying to figure it out, but then you get really ungrounded.
Yeah, you don't wanna do that.
Yeah.
Um, well, yeah, the question is, what is true? What is, my belief, and is it accurate? Or, versus reality. When you go through a process of awakening, there's also the trouble that you are not fully awake. So, you think you are, but you're really asleep.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, it is a spectrum, isn't it? I don't know that I've met anybody who is fully awake. I think that we all have more work to do for the most part, generally speaking. Maybe there's some people out there. I'm not sure. I've not met them.
Well, you know, not everyone wants to, I think.
Or
Right?
that too.
It's really hard work.
Yeah.
I mean, it's when I explain meditation to people and some of the processes that I use and work with, they can very quickly intellectualize it and dissect it and break it down. And they're like, "Oh, I got this." I'm like, "Okay, good luck." It's hard work. It's hard work to breathe and meditate and bring awareness to your life. It's not easy. So what is true? I don't know. It's constantly evolving for me.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And in deeper levels, just when I think I've got things, I'm starting to figure it out and I've got that level, a whole new awareness comes where I'm like, oh, there's more. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll get it, you know. But it's so what I was actually in meditation about this, trying to understand my own process more deeply. And because there are things that I do logically get, I very much get it, but there's a deeper aspect of me that sometimes there's fear around, or it feels unstable, or there's a trauma that hasn't been healed, or something that's preventing me from fully embodying that idea or belief that I'm trying to embody. And it's just fascinating, the layers and the depths that can entail. And what they were trying to show me is, if to visualize it, I don't even know how I'm going to actually show this to you because I'm still a concept that I'm trying to understand more fully. But if let's say this is like the average 3D person, right? We're in this world, we're of this world, we're worried about all the things of this world, right? And we don't give our spirituality too much understanding or even our belief sets, or we just don't even pay attention to it. We just think we're right.
Mhm,
And if this is, let's say, an ascended master, somebody who has it pretty much, but is still unfolding because they're still here and they're still trying to figure it out in other ways, in more deeper ways. But let's say this is an ascended master. Very few people have ever gone from here to here in a blink of an eye. It's a process. It's a deeper and deeper evolving. It's a deeper and deeper understanding. And eventually you get here. And I think part of what keeps us so stuck is so many times we judge each other, um, especially in religious and spiritual communities. We get judged for when we are not at that ascended master level. And it makes it really hard to then face our egos because our egos don't want people to judge us. And so I also see that process as an ever unfolding taming of the ego, where you're healing and growing and expanding and understanding yourself more deeply. And then the more vulnerable you get with yourself, sometimes that means being vulnerable with other people. And not everybody is so kind and loving. Your face, right?
ah,
Not,
well, someone brought up to me today, you
oh,
know, vulnerability is one of those words that's sort of tossed out there all the time.
mhm,
I don't think people truly understand it.
yeah.
Like, there's some depth to being vulnerable, you know? Um, just this show, we've been pretty open and vulnerable about things, you know?
Yeah.
There's a risk to that. There's a certain amount of courage, it's another buzzword. Um, and one of the things we'll say is take what resonates and leave the rest. But what resonates is kind of getting into that title, right? What's belief versus reality? What do I
Yeah.
want to be true or wishful thinking, and what is the real thing behind it? And it's not easy to discern. And if you do self work, which is worthwhile. It's also hard, that healthy suffering. And I would say not everyone is willing to do it. It's just too scary.
Yeah, I agree. It's and I think a lot of times it's because we are so afraid of being wrong. If we have a certain set of rules in our framework and the way our paradigm of whatever this experience is, a lot of people like to create rules because rules create boundaries and it helps you form a foundation of some kind. And I've seen people that give up all the rules and then they just kind of lose it. They go to the opposite direction. They're off in outer space and they have no idea how to survive on this planet. So it goes both ways. And somehow you need to have a foot in both. And being able to navigate this reality in a grounded sort of way while also not necessarily playing by the rules of what we think this reality is about, so that we can create that alchemy that we, as spiritual seekers, are looking for in shifting our experience here and playing in this playground, right?
Yeah. So I had sent you a video, and
It was a good one.
I want to make sure I get this right. I think it's Bernard Gunther. His website's Veil of Reality, and he has a podcast that perhaps we will put in the show notes called The Cosmic Matrix. But in discussing what is reality, he talks about false resonance. And that's where we get caught up in our thoughts, our feelings, sensations, beliefs that we cling to. And oftentimes that is wishful thinking about how we want the world to be versus how it is. Um, and also, you talked about self limiting beliefs, but a lot of those are often unconscious.
Hmm. Very.
So a lot of our beliefs are shaped by our unconscious projections. You're not even aware, so these things are what we might tune into and think is our true self, really our false self. So it's part of our conditioning, programming, and wounding.
And I often tell my students and the people that come to me, I definitely have people who just come to me and they just want healing and where they really need to shift some of their beliefs or their mindsets. They need to face their egos a bit. And then I also have the opposite, where some people are like, it's all about beliefs. And I'm like, yeah, but you can't really shift the belief on a deep level if you've got some trauma or family pattern, ancestral thing that might be holding it back. It takes both, to really ascend in that experience that we call life. It's both the consciousness, the mind, and healing of the experience that we've had here. It's a mix, and doing them both together brings the quickest results. uh, Sometimes you need to focus more on one thing or another, but really understand that this is, as my guides like to say, it's almost like it's a game. It's a choose your own adventure game. And at any point in time, you can hit pause and change your point of view or your pathway and what you're going to do next. And there are levels and you're like working on figuring it out. And sometimes there are like Easter eggs where you can get a little something that's hidden. And it's just there are ways you can win without going through all of the motions. So like, when we were talking about this versus this, the average human of earth and an ascended master, you might not need to go here, then here, then here. You might be able to go from here to here and fast forward and move through some things that might other people might not see or be able to take advantage of. So, and what that is different with every single experience, but there are ways through things and you don't have to suffer for 20 years through something. There are quicker ways through it, usually, as long as you're healing and working that mind mastery and questioning your egoic beliefs.
Well, you have to bring awareness and actually question them and face fears or face things, challenges, lessons. and not avoid them. It's that avoidance that prolongs the suffering, in my opinion. If you decide now that you want to make life better, then you can. Um, but you might shed some beliefs that you thought were absolutes.
And things you promoted
Sure,
and judged people for. Yeah, it's very uncomfortable,
sure, but it worthwhile, right? Like, no one gets there's no cheat code.
right?
There's like, "Oh, I just get to, like, you know, skip a level."
Well, but the thing is I think if you can get your ego under control enough, and not that the ego is the enemy, but the ego often does hold us back, right? It's the personality of who we are, but I think it's even deeper than that, as far as what the ego actually is. And when we can allow that to be on the back burner and really just be a truth seeker, wherever that may lead, we end up opening more easily to what is more aligned with truth. And I think truth is evolving. I think where we're at in this experience, we can only understand so much. You know, we I think someone who is the ascended master probably has a much deeper and better understanding of how all this works than we could ever possibly have until we get to more of that level of understanding of this experience. But
Well, to that point, though, if you're gonna go down the master route, you have to face some things and be open-minded about you're not caring about what people say is true. You're tuning into that yourself. You're doing some really hard work on your own.
well, I
Uh,
think that's important regardless. I think we've been taught or programmed to group think, to have comfort in groups because then we know we're not alone and we must not be wrong because all these other people think the same thing. So that makes me feel right. But I think the awakening process, one of the first things that really should be approached is letting go of that idea of needing to belong to the group and trusting that even if you have wounding and misconceptions and everything else, just trusting that the truth is going to come to you if you're just open enough to heal and work through it.
Scary.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. Not healing is uncomfortable. Even if it's, physical healing is uncomfortable. People go through things all the time. When you're really getting to the root of an issue, it gets uncomfortable. You're detoxing and things happen and you get uncomfortable detox symptoms. You're
Yeah.
healing a bone, the bone aches, it hurts, it's trying to
Well,
recover.
it's because of that, people in groupthink or holding on to certain things will often reject truth because it challenges a deeply ingrained belief,
Yeah.
or there's fear that so you will stay stuck in it. And so then you're also caught in this trap of cognitive dissonance because you're not really seeking truth. You sort of misapplied this concept of what resonates as actual truth. So, you kind of get rid of things that you truly might believe otherwise. So it's interesting to work with those things as you go along. Um, so in one way that this guy puts it is, your instrument is not tuned correctly, and when it's not tuned accurately, you can get yourself into some trouble.
Mm.
It takes a lot of courage to face these things introspectively. It takes a lot of psychological work, psychosocial work to dial things in, get them right. Otherwise, you get caught up in fear, and that's really where your doorway is to truth. I think if there's something that's coming up that scares you, like take a look at it. There's something there for you to learn. Um, Otherwise, you know, you're not gonna transmute it.
Well, no. Some people might be like, "What is transmute?"
Um, transmute is if um, this was very valuable work. There's something called the meditation of the violet flame.
Mm.
The transmutation of energy is, in a sense, alchemy. You know, you're taking the energy of a negative emotion, um, say like anger, right? Like I was hurt by somebody, I'm angry about it, I'm carrying all this anger. The anger is probably hurting me more than anyone, right? Like me being angry with you is not going to hurt you, but it's really going to hurt me. So if I can change that energy into something more constructive, you know, maybe it's like self-love or something else, or learning how to forgive myself or forgive other people, then that becomes very powerful. I've now taken that energy and I could utilize it for my benefit to more constructive means, and that's transmutation. Um, and I do want to add, you're the master of your own inner being. So whatever fear you have is coming up in you, not anyone else.
Well, that I know when we before we started recording, we talked about reality versus beliefs, and I think most people function with the idea that they've created their beliefs because of the reality. And what the spiritual approach does is it helps you understand it's actually the opposite. Reality comes forth based on your beliefs. Um, and I think it's a little bit more than just beliefs. There's wounding and things that help you create those distortions that we have about whatever truth actually is. But generally speaking, like if you think life is meant to be really hard, then that's pretty much going to be your experience. And it might have come from your parents and your grandparents. It might be an ancestral thing. There could be a ancestral curse going on in your family so that life is hard. But truly, life doesn't have to be hard. There might be an external reason to a degree, but also you came in as a soul agreeing to correct that ancestral energy or to take it on or to try to clear it in some way. And so we do have agreements like that where we come in and we do these things. So it's not always as simple as what is your belief, but I think it's a big, big part of what the experience is.
Bringing awareness to the challenges that you're facing in your life is how you start to work on these things. So, where am I being challenged? And how can I find greater flow with that? Typically, that means facing it, whatever that is, and not being afraid to face it. You know, knowing that you can, there's a reason, there's a lesson. It's okay. Yes, it's hard. It's difficult. Know that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. But also, are we making it more difficult than it needs to be? Like, I just keep
Well,
thinking, there are definitely times when my ego was like, "Nope, not gonna do it." And if I just would have been able to tame the ego a little bit more, I wonder if I would have had an easier time with things, if it would have gone more smoothly or more quickly, for the awarenesses I have developed, you know? But I don't know, maybe not. Maybe sometimes things are just a journey and we just are meant to walk through it, and what might be easy for one person might be meant to be more challenging for another. I do think that there are agreements that we hold with certain things, but at the same time, maybe that's just another belief. I don't know.
well, but part of the work is separating the false beliefs, and some of those would be assumptions, conditioning, expectations, wishful thinking, wounding, traumas, bias, buffers, projections, emotional hooks. Pause there for a reason.
Yeah.
Ego desires. Um, you know, so being discerning of those things and knowing that they exist, not to churn up more fear, but to know that that's part of reality. You know, we are constantly being manipulated and conditioned by forces unseen or, you know, manipulated and propagandized to do all kinds of stuff. It's not to scare you, but you should be aware of it. Uh,
Yes.
I do credit you for forcing me to work on some interesting things here. Um, One other thing I do want to mention, because this is something that you brought up in soul growth one time, and that lies to ourself are more harmful and harder to detect. They're way harder than detecting the lies that are on the outside of us, where it's like, oh, yeah, that's total BS.
Yeah.
But we lie to ourselves so good.
Yeah, we do.
And so paying attention to that is very helpful. Where am I telling myself these lies? Um, just even admitting to yourself that you do that, which is really hard for people. It's like, why would I do that? Uh, but that kind of gets to the heart of the matter, where one of the another thing he says is the level of being or soul embodiment determines how much higher knowledge you can access via direct experience that goes way beyond a mental approach of just thinking or intellectually dissecting or processing information. You're not going to think your way out of all these things, which I think is important for people to know.
Yeah.
Um,
I like this guy. I'd
it's
never heard
pretty
of him
cool.
before, but I like him.
Yeah, it resonates.
Very much. Yes. And he even talks about, like channeling and things like that, which, that's another whole topic, but I love what
Yeah,
he said about that. And he basically says, what did he say? There was like false channeling, and how did he word it? Did you write that
yeah,
down?
yeah, absolutely. No, I made a lot of notes on this. This is like a few-minute video. But I do want to point out, he's not demonizing the mind or anything like that. Like, you need to think critically on things. It's not a bad thing. You just can't think your way through everything or rely on that.
And I want to add to that too. A lot of people think that their emotions or their feelings are always the answers. And I would say that's actually not true. A lot of times our feelings are just, they're a symptom of our beliefs or our mindset. And we think or feel something based on beliefs. And so the deeper you can go into your belief around something or your thoughts behind an emotion, the more you can understand why you're actually having an emotion. And my guides have said, a wounded heart makes for a crappy GPS. And a lot of people follow their heart or they follow their emotions around something. So if someone's making them angry, they feel they're being, whatever, a victim of something that made them angry. And well, maybe that's not even the truth of the matter. And so instead of always trusting your egoic emotions, going deeper into the sense and the wisdom of what's happening. And again, that, just like you said, that's not analytical, that's experiential.
Yeah. Well, curious your thoughts on this. Um, well, I should clarify. The mind is important. You need critical thinking, but you don't want it to be your master. You want it to be your servant. So it's a tool.
Right.
Um, Otherwise, you get into troubles with false resonance. So bringing up that term again, um, and curious your thoughts here. Many well-meaning people spread disinformation and corrupted pop spiritual new age teachings,
Hmm.
which maybe not for everyone listening, but that's you got to be very careful
Yeah.
with what you're consuming. Um, and then he gets into the channel material, which is pretty wildly popular, I think, now on YouTube and things like that, podcasting. And so he says, yeah, the charade of channel material many people are resonating with, but often appeals to the wounded ego needing to feel special or wanting to be saved. And so just unpacking that, people get attracted to what makes them feel good.
Hmm.
And that can be helpful in some sense, but it'll take you off the path of you need to dive into your feelings and get uncomfortable if you truly want to do some actual work.
Yeah.
Just listening to somebody tell you something positive, it's not necessarily helpful,
Yeah.
or it can be manipulative and keep you stuck.
That's true. Yeah. I totally agree with that. And it's funny, I've definitely come across some of that as well, where I will resonate with some of what's being said by a channel, and then other things I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. But I think
Yeah, I'm super
even
curious.
when we're channeling, and I love channeling, I very much love it, and I get a lot of good information for myself when I channel, especially for myself. Um, but even that, it's still coming from another being. They might be wiser and they might have walked in your shoes before, and they might be further ahead in that path, but it doesn't mean they know everything, you know? So it's like, it's almost like you are connecting with, I don't know, let's say you're in college and you're talking with a professor who knows a lot more about a subject than you do, but they also have their points of view and their belief system and their own version of what their role is in this
Sure.
experience. And so putting all of our eggs into any particular basket with a channel, I think, is probably not necessarily a wise thing to do. If it feels helpful and it seems like it's helping you understand more about you, I think that's a great thing. Um, but yeah, I would be careful to just blindly believe any channel at 100%.
Yeah.
And I
So
channel, so you know, but I'm always like, I'm going to do the best I can, but I have my own distortions, the way it comes through, and then so do our guides and our masters that we call in.
well, even working as a channel, right? Like, am I getting the message clearly? Am I interpreting this correctly? Or medium or anyone else, like that's a that's work, that's practice in making it clear. So there's a lot that goes into that. But one of the things that he said, I do kind of want to get into, and maybe it's its own episode at one point. Well, we talked about the law of one in an earlier episode, and throughout the law of one, their their channel is under attack
Hmm.
by a negative entity, and so they're constantly like on guard with that. Like, how do I protect myself, and how do I keep the channel safe and free from interference? Um, but this guy goes on to say negative entities posing as positive ones are behind most of the popular channeled material out there, for they know how easily humans are emotionally manipulated.
Yeah,
These hyperdimensional shapeshifters target false resonance in the truth seeker or the contactee. So, people are contacted for abductions and things like that. And it forms the basics of occult matrix mind control.
yeah,
So I thought that was pretty wild. I haven't quite heard someone articulate that in that way before. So that was interesting. It made me think, you know, there's some things that I really like that I enjoy from certain channelers, but how much of that is coming through correctly versus not? So it poses an interesting question. Um, I also want to be clear about this too, because he makes a point of it, but good disinformation is most often lies mixed with truth.
mm,
And you put in enough truth to use it as bait to get the truth seeker to resonate, or you hook the ego, right? Like it sounds true, must be true, but there's just enough lies to keep you asleep, so you're not awake because you end up swallowing the lies, and then yeah, you're not awakened even though you might think you are.
yeah. But I think even that is a part of the process in coming into your own power. Sometimes I think we need to experience something like that so that we can more deeply learn to trust our own wisdom and understanding in that space of oneness with the creator as opposed to the egoic space. And it's a very different feel when you get information when you're deep in meditation or deeply connected with the all that is. What comes through is so different than if you're lightly there or if you're listening to someone channel or whatever. It's just you have to. I agree with him. You have to experience it. You need to get in there and do it. And everything according to the law of one, really everything is distortion. Until we really come back into oneness with the one true creator, um, we are operating through distortion. And so, the way my guides talk about it, the more wounded somebody is, or the more, let's say, family ancestry patterns that you need to clear, the more things like that happen, the more distortion there is, and the harder it is to come to truth and to understand or to see truth. So, I do think that that is a process. I think what might keep some people from even going down this path is that they're afraid to address that, to see that, to start figuring that out, that we really don't understand any of this very well at all. And
Well, if I could offer some hope and maybe a
yes,
pathway, meditating opened up my mind to possibilities. There's so many possibilities, right? Like that you can figure out how to navigate. Like you do have this power within you to discern, you know, fact from fiction. Um, is it Mark Twain that said the truth is stranger than fiction?
yeah,
Um, there's when you're on that path, it's also exciting and you hit certain levels, right? Like it's fascinating to learn that there's this whole other world out there, or that you have the ability to deal with really hard things, and life doesn't have to be a struggle, and you don't have to be a victim. You don't have to live your life by what other people think. You can carve your own path and go on your own adventure. Um, those are all positive things. Um, and then I guess I would say you're kind of where you are supposed to be right now. So don't feel like you're behind, the eight ball here. Like wherever you are is totally fine. Just pay attention to it and know that you can start to kind of work on yourself now. And don't have to be judgmental or harsh to yourself. Just be kind to yourself along the way. And if you get duped, or if I get duped, like, okay, it happened, right? Like, probably is gonna happen. Sure has happened already.
right. I know. Yes,
So
yes.
it is an ongoing process, and have fun with it too. Like it's not supposed to be this miserable thing.
I totally agree.
Um, what else is there? Anything else that we missed? We cling to our ego identity, right, and our worldview.
Oh, yes, we do. That's
It's not
probably,
easy
yeah.
when someone challenges, your beliefs or your dogma, or people that you look up to, but it's worthwhile to question things and question the world around you and see where you want to go from there. All right,
Yeah.
Jay.
Well, what
Been
would
very
you, so if someone is trying to awaken, or even if they've already started awakening and they're in this process, what are some things that you think people should look at within themselves to question or to help them be even more in alignment with being the truth seeker instead of the bias protector?
I mean, one of the exercises that I have people start with is the wheel of life, where you look at all these different aspects of your life and you just rate them. Where are things going well and where are things needing improvement? It's just a simple self assessment, but you're starting to bring awareness to things that you may not always bring awareness to. Like, what are the quality of my relationships with people, with friends, with work, with my partner, um, with myself?
Yeah. It's probably the most important
A-
one.
Am I treating myself okay? A lot of times people are treating themselves really harshly. Uh, so you start to bring awareness to that, and then whatever becomes a priority, maybe it's finding people who are positive role models in your life. Not everyone has that. Go find community. Find people that um, are helpful. And then you just start to build on those things. I'm friends with people that have different beliefs than me. It doesn't bother me. It, if they're good people, they mean well, like that's fantastic. Like they enrich my life, and hopefully, in some small way, I enrich theirs. But that's kind of where I would start, and then looking inward at what, well, I'd say tune into your heart, but what does your soul need? What would be nourishing? What gives you joy? Who am I? Deep soul questions that you can actually take time in your day to reflect on and ponder and journal. Write it out. Um, I was reading somewhere the other day that a guy has a 6 foot whiteboard and he writes all his ideas on it.
Wow.
And he was like, it's just so liberating. I get the ideas, I write them out, and then it just frees up all this like short term memory, right? Like this RAM in my brain. Um, but things like that, like okay, like what is interesting on that board that you might want to try? Give it a shot, see what happens. Like who knows? You might find something that ignites passion in your life. Um, so those are a few things, but you have to ask yourself the question. I would say a lot of times where people might come to me is they've been living their life that other people told them to live, whether they know it or not, whether it was like directly said to them, like you have to be a doctor and you didn't want to be a doctor, but that's what was implied. And so you did it, and now you're a doctor and you don't like it.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people are living the life that someone else wanted them to live. So figuring out what the life you want to live is, what that might look like, and start to take action with it. The action is probably the hardest part. You can't just think it into existence. You're
Yeah.
not going to manifest an idea without taking action. So know that.
Yeah, that's true. And I really think people need to get vulnerable with themselves and just question. A lot of times, we get triggered by things that show up. And instead of living in that trigger and being mad at whatever happened or fearful or whatever it is you're feeling, instead of living in that and expecting the outside world to change things, start looking within about why that trigger might have happened. Why do you feel that way about whatever happened? Could there be a different way to see it? Could it be helping you in some way? What is it about you that you need to know and understand? Because you and I know, but not everyone who's awakening understands that what is showing up in your life is happening because of something within you. So the universe is always reflecting back to us whatever we need to know or understand or heal. And so that's often, I think, a really good space for people to be in whenever they get upset, to stop and look at it more deeply.
Sure. Be non-judgmental with that process.
Yeah, I know,
Um,
right? Yes.
you know, so I'll give you an example. If I get triggered, I'm not trying to create a safe space. I don't agree with that. I think that doesn't help you grow.
Hmm.
If I get triggered, take a look at it. Be non-judgmental with it. okay, what about this triggered me? What emotion is showing up? Why am I thinking a certain kind of way? Where is this person coming from? Or why is this idea so appalling to me? Um, and then just sit with it and kind of go through it and see what's it all about, and then arrive at a conclusion, and then you can decide what you want to do then. But don't see it as some like, ooh, that's doesn't feel good. I don't want to deal with that. Otherwise, you'll start writing people off and won't have any friends.
Yeah, I know, right? No, yeah, no, you just gotta figure it out. Well, a good example of that is, when we drive in traffic and someone cuts us off or honks at us or does something that either we're just like, we get mad. Usually it's we get mad. Like, why did they do that? They just cut me
Mhm.
off, right? Well, usually people just leave it at that and they just think that person was a jerk because they just cut you off, right? And what a spiritual person or someone who's on this path probably would do or hopefully will do is to then question, why did that bother me so much? Instead of, flipping them the finger and honking the horn back or whatever it is that the human of us wants to do. Why did that bother me so much? Why was I so upset that they just cut me off? I'm fine. I didn't get in an accident. Everything's okay. And then, what I have found, at least for me, when I question those things, usually I'm either feeding off of the competitiveness of that other person, and I don't want them to get ahead of me. So that's like one aspect I've noticed in myself is the competitiveness, the driving, like you're not going to get in front of me, that happens. But then also too, the idea that they put you in danger, that it was not safe, that they were more caring about their own needs and not about yours. And so what I do is I just kind of look at that and I'm like, okay, well, where else in my life am I not feeling safe? Where else in my life do I feel like other people aren't putting me ahead? Or where do I feel like maybe I'm too caring and I'm too giving and people just take advantage of it and just come right in? So I look at it more in terms of what it's trying to show me about me, and I let it go. If they want to go get in an accident, who am I to stop them, And me being mad at them is not going to stop it. And, it's like you said, they're not going to be affected by my frustration or my irritation that they just cut me off. So that does no good. And it's not really your power. Your power is taking what's showing up and applying it to what's going on within you. And where do you need to grow? Where do you need to heal? Where do you need to understand a wiser point of view? Because, like I said, you can't go from normal average human to master overnight. There's a process there. And the universe is so graceful in its ability to give you those opportunities for that understanding and to get to the next level of it.
Just remembering what you said about a broken heart makes for a crappy compass,
Crappy GPS, yes.
crappy GPS. Um, that's how I look at fear.
Yes.
So, like, 2 themes that come up for me a lot, um, or more than I would like to maybe admit, is fear and doubt. So when they pop up in my awareness, that's a note for me to be like, "Okay, what do I need to do to face this fear?" And maybe it's like, "Oh, I gotta call that person back and talk about this difficult thing." Um, but if I do it, I won't feel the fear anymore. Like,
Hmm.
it's I've taken care of this thing, it's resolved. Um, and just noticing when those things happen that you can deal with them and resolve them and move on. So I try not to feed that. Otherwise, you can create a story and all these negative things and maybe shift into a victim mentality pretty quickly. So
Yeah.
I want to try to avoid that by not avoiding the problem.
It's funny. I've noticed with myself because, I've definitely been in the questioning of my beliefs, my reality for a long time and always coming to newer understandings. But there's a deeper part of me. Um, Maybe it's more like the subconscious or the inner child but there are things that sometimes come up where whatever that is needs some sort of validation of the experience before it can be healed. So there's like this. That's why I'm saying healing is so important, being able to understand what's going on deeply, because as much as I might logically understand something sometimes, I will not be able to really fully integrate it until that thing is dealt with, that it's healed or it's cleared or it's managed or dealt with. Um, Even just sometimes just acknowledging that a thing happened that made me feel like I was in a victim state, right? So someone's cutting you off and it's like, wow, that really did scare me. Oh, I honor that I just felt that fear. I honor that. Okay, but now how do I heal that? Why is that why is that a thing? Why am I experiencing this? Why am I creating this experience? Because we are creating our own experiences. But it's just not always easy to figure out what those things are that are creating more and more distortion. Sometimes it's hard to come to. And but I think that creates a lot of frustration in the spiritual experience. And you ask 100 different people what the issue is, you're going to get 100 different answers.
Yeah, which is why you gotta go inward, and that's sort of direct access, right? Like, you're
Yeah.
tuning into you, and from a very pure soul awareness, right? Like your true self, it's not going to lie to you if it's tuned in correctly.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of truth with that. But I've also seen some people so, I'm just, for lack of a better way of putting it, just so full of distortion. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but just energetically, let's say when there's a trauma, it creates like a weird fractal. I don't know how else to describe it, but if you have a perfect crystal and you're shining the light through, you get perfect, beautiful light coming through. You get a rainbow, right? But let's say that that has like an occlusion or it's some sort of a weird crack or something. Well, everything gets all distorted.
Right.
I see trauma that way as well. And, or also when, like, if the family line is cursed, a lot of people got cursed many years ago. And it comes down through the family line. It's not, I've met a lot of people who say, well, you can only be cursed if you believe in curses. Well, but unfortunately, it's in the family line. How do you explain that? Well, I don't know. I think these things are very real. And I think that those who come into family lines who have curses are coming in to experience that for some reason, maybe even just to heal it. I'm not sure, but it does happen. And so it's in trying to understand this whole scheme of things. When you have somebody who's got a lot of distortion in their prism, in their crystal of being, they're not going to be able to access the wisdom. They're going to be accessing hurt and fear and anger and frustration. They're going to be accessing a very massive distortion. Does that make sense? But at the same time, the journey is finding their way in and finding their way to heal that. And sometimes other people need to show you that. We can't always see our blind spots. So it creates this weird thing that we need to navigate where we're trying to find help in seeing our blind spots. We're trying to find help in where are those distortions and how do I heal it? But then also trusting yourself enough wherever you're at to be able to take that next step. And is this person going to be the one to help me? Because I can't see, right? That does happen. So I want to make it clear that, while the power truly is within, sometimes we have a hard time finding our power and trusting it because it is so distorted.
Well, I think what you're saying is you're not necessarily just going to do this by yourself.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't really talk about ascended masters, but like they have a guru disciple relationship,
Hmm.
or you have a teacher. Um, the whole teach learn concept. So you go to someone who is a healer, and they're going to show you certain things or give you a window into things, but you're seeking that person too, right? Like
Yeah.
that's your work. So you're not shying away from the problems. I would say that that's just part of the process. Like, I'm going to go see this person and see what I can do to kind of help heal. And so you might receive help, but you're still doing the work.
Yeah. And I would say probably the first step of anybody who is just trying to get started the first step is really committing to yourself to face whatever you need to face, to heal whatever needs to be healed, to become aware of whatever you need to become aware of, in an effort to just be in the most truth possible that you can possibly be in wherever you're at, and to bring in the most healing and to, in a sense, up level from wherever you are. Um, and
That's a good way of looking at it.
yeah, I mean, as soon as you open up to it and you put it out to God, universe, whatever it is you want to call the all that is, as soon as you do that, things start opening up and the journey truly begins, right? So,
Well, I absolutely believe that because that's what my experience is. But
yeah, but it doesn't mean it's easy. It just means,
no,
okay, now the real purpose has begun.
well, usually you get shipwrecked and then you're like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, sometimes.
help.
But, I really think that when stuff like that happens, it's because we need to break down some sort of egoic construct, something that we're doing where we just aren't either letting go of, or, maybe it's a marriage or a job or something like that. Sometimes things need to come crashing down around you, or what we call the tower moment, because otherwise you won't rebuild and you won't build that new platform that you need to work on and work from. You can't keep going in the spiritual growth and development from the same old platform. You have to reconstruct, you have to rebuild.
If you're willing to do that, you will be rewarded.
Yes.
The tower moment. That's
Yeah.
sounds so much nicer than shipwrecked.
I think they both sound bad. I don't know. But I mean, again, it depends on your point of view. Some people can really embrace that, especially if they've been through it a few times. They start realizing, oh, okay, I'm just around the corner from what's really coming. All right, let's go. Down she goes. You know, I don't know. I tend to hold on a little bit myself because I don't exactly enjoy that tower crumbling. But I also look forward to what's on the other side. I kind of have a bit of both.
Well, yeah, I guess there's something to embracing the suck.
Yeah, I know, right? Who really likes that? I don't know.
I don't think anybody, maybe David Goggins, I don't know, maybe. Um, but yeah,
One day we will embrace the suck and fully love it and just be like, yes, this is good. What's next?
it is possible to see these things just as challenges, right?
Yes,
Or,
yes,
okay, this happened. This was very unpleasant, but this is a catalyst for change.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
let's go.
Yeah, and understanding that, knowing it is one thing, but as things start really shifting in your life and it gets a little uncomfortable and you maybe don't feel like you're on solid footing because you're not finished building that other platform yet, sometimes it is disconcerting. And, I think it's okay to feel that way as long as you just keep trusting in that process and trusting in the creator that, they have your back. The universe has your back.
Uh, do you know how lobsters grow? Have we talked about that before?
No.
No? So, the lobster has the hard shell, the exoskeleton, and when it grows, the soft body inside comes up against the hard shell and it starts to get stressed because it's uncomfortable. And so when it gets to that point, the lobster will go swim under a rock where it's, safe enough from predatory fish to somehow emold the shell, the hard shell, and get
Wow.
rid of it. And then it'll regrow a hard shell that's bigger that allows for more room to grow. Um, and then it'll repeat that process for decades, right? Like lobsters
Yeah.
can live a really long time. Like if you've ever seen a really old lobster, it's huge. So the joke is that if lobsters had psychiatrists, they would never grow. So because the stimulus for growth is feeling uncomfortable.
Yep.
So there you go. That's how lobsters grow.
Oh. But it does get easier over time. Like after you've been through it a few times, you really do start to feel like, oh, here it is. Okay. It's definitely easier than that first that first tower moment, that first
Well, you
show.
also have confidence once you've been through a few things that
Yeah.
they happen. Life
Yeah.
is filled with things, traumas, tragedies, catastrophes. They're gonna happen. So,
How you
you know,
respond is the whole point.
that's true. There you go. Very mindful, Jen.
Thank you, Jim. Well, I love this conversation. I'm so glad we did this.
Absolutely. Thank you again, and thank you to everyone who's listening. If you want to find out more about events coming up with Nourishing Journey, please check out their website and the services they offer there, or Jen's services. And anything on the horizon you want to share, Jen?
Oh gosh, I don't know. There's always so many things going on.
Yeah.
We'll probably do an open house soon. How about
Okay.
that?
Well, check out their website and upcoming events. And until next time,
All
we'll
right.
see you then.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
We are so grateful that you joined us. Check out the description to learn more about us and also for additional resources to help you on your journey.